I'm Brett Johnson, former United States most wanted cyber criminal, now good guy. Or as the United States Secret Service called me, the original internet godfather. Now, how did I get that title? Well, I'll tell you how I got that title. Hell, I do it every single week. The 39 felonies, a place on the United States most wanted list. I escaped from prison, and I built and ran the first organized cybercrime community. It was called Shadow Crew. It was a precursor of today's dark web and dark web markets. It laid the foundation for the way modern cybercrime channels operate today. Those 39 felonies had to do with refining modern financial cybercrime as we now know it. If you want to look at one guy that's responsible for a lot of this shit, you're looking at him. And yes, that shit does land you in prison, deservedly so. Now, look, there's a whole story behind all that. We don't have time for that today because today, right now, it's time for the Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode, bots. Bots. Yes, bots. Bots are bad for your health when we come back. Okay, so we are back to the Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode, bots are bad for your health. Okay, maybe not all bots, but the way that we're talking about today, bots are definitely bad for your health. We'll get to that. But before we get to the meat of the episode, there are some things that we need to discuss. As always, there are some things we need to discuss because, hey, this is a Brett Johnson Show. It's kind of a cybercrime, cybersecurity show, but I called it the Brett Johnson Show for a reason, so that I could talk about other things if I wanted to. So we could do that some. I've had a lot, and what I'm going to begin each show with is talking about some community requests, some questions that I've been sent by email or through the chat session, not chat session, but the comment section on YouTube, different channels like that. So we're going to talk about that. We've had a lot of requests, or I've had a lot. I say we like I've got a team. No, I don't have a team. But I've had a lot of requests for a Discord channel. Yes, Discord will be coming. There we go. Discord is absolutely coming. And here is my logic behind that. I really had hesitated coming up with a Discord channel because I want to be active in anything that I start. So that is going to have some work to it. But what I've noticed is on the YouTube comment section, you guys have been absolutely fantastic about asking questions, about recommending different show topics, things like that. And I really think that Discord would help lend to that. I really think that Discord would come in and really help with topics, help with discussions, help flesh out ideas for episodes, maybe potential guests, if I ever decide to come up with guests. And speaking of which, I am going to have a couple of guests come on the show. Imagine that. I have this problem with bringing guests on Zoom, but guess what? I don't have a lot of money. I'm not like these other podcasts that have, a few million subscribers. Hopefully we'll get there. They have all these subscribers and they can actually pay to fly out some interviewee and sit down with them in a physical space and do a podcast or do a YouTube show or whatever. I don't have that kind of money. And if you saw my office, you'd realize I don't have that kind of space either. So it's going to be by Zoom. I'm bringing in two individuals. The first, his name is Justin Pierce, and I'm bringing him in to talk about the SolarWinds attack. Justin he really is very knowledgeable about this attack, and I want to do an episode on SolarWinds because for some reason it's not really being talked about in the media. The news has not really been talking about the damage that it's done. They mentioned it initially, but since that point, it's kind of been, I think it's been swept under the rug. And I think that really the SolarWinds has been partially responsible for that. They don't want to talk about how damaging that attack is. So we're going to bring Justin in and we're going to do an episode just on what happened with SolarWinds, the damage, how it was done, everything else. Okay. So that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'm also going to bring in a gentleman by the name of John Swartz. He's a former FBI agent. He has now started up a nonprofit group that deals and combats elder abuse fraud, so senior citizen fraud. I like the man. He was the guy that when he was with the FBI, he was responsible for bringing me in to talk at Quantico. And Quantico was one of these life-changing experiences for me because I got to see people there that had sacrificed making large amounts of money because they wanted to do the right thing. And it really hit me hard when I walked into Quantico and saw these cadets there, because I had spent my entire life spending or stealing money. And these guys had given up the opportunity to make buku amounts of money just in order to do the right thing. And it really made an impression on me. So I'm bringing John in. He's now combating elder abuse fraud now that he's retired from the FBI. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the criminal mindset as well. So those are the two guests that are going to be coming on the show. This show is not going to be a guest-centric show. This is the Brett Johnson Show, and it's a lot about cybercrime. I'm very knowledgeable in that. If I ever bring a guest on, it's because there is a specific reason for that. Most podcasts have guests on to generate content. I'm not going to do that. So there you go. Discord incoming. A couple of guests I mentioned incoming as well. We're going to have those on in the next few weeks, talk about those different types of subjects. Right now we're talking about the different comments and suggestions that are coming in through the content board. And I got to tell you, I love it. I love it because it really lets me focus on what people watching the show want to hear about, want to learn about. All right. Of course, I continue to get comments about be yourself, Brett. We want that guy that was on the Lex Fridman show. That's who we want. You are not that guy. You're not acting like that guy. Well, guess what, guys? I am that guy, but I'm also this loud-ass asshole that's on my show. Whether you like it or not, humans are multifaceted. And yes, I do my voices and I do all this other stuff. I got to be honest with you. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I cannot be that guy that comes in and does that on a regular basis, do what I did at Lex Fridman on a regular basis. For me to do that, for me to sit down and do that, so you don't see that when I get through that show, that, opening up like that, discussing my past like that, you don't see that it takes me a week to recover, that I go through a depression, everything else, and I'm reliving every single aspect of what happened. All right. And I need to do that. I agree with you. I need to do that. But for this show, I'll do that sometimes. But this show also has to be fun for me to do it. And fun for you guys, fun for me too. All right. And because it's not just a show for the viewers, it's also a show for me. So I can help grow as a human being, help get these things out, and know that I'm doing a good job when it comes to talking about how to protect yourself or your business organization from people like I used to be. So there we go. There were a couple of comments. A gentleman, he actually messaged me today, or left some comments today. We were talking on the YouTube comments by the screen name of Neanderthal Learning Games Community. And very good guy. He made some very good points. And what he said he reminded me of something. He said, hey, this is the Brett Johnson Show. This show is also about you. And you're right. Neanderthal, dude, you're right. I can talk about more than just cybercrime attacks, mindsets, and things like that. I need to be talking about me. And that's actually what I had intended to do. It's just there's so much stuff to talk about when it comes to cybercrime. I've got so many different topics that I need to get out there and inform the community about that. I'm sorry to say, but a lot of, the Brett Johnson coming to terms with Brett Johnson, or me coming to terms with me, has taken a back seat to a degree, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So what I'm thinking about doing, I still have to talk about these topics on how to do proper security, how to defend yourself against fraud, the different types of fraud that are taking place. But what I think I can do is come in at the beginning of the show and start to feed into that a bit, talk about some of the issues and do some separate shows too, because one of the things I've also been getting feedback on, and this happened with my Anglerfish podcast too, but I've gotten a lot of feedback from people who have been abused as children or had a parent like my mom that, it really damaged them later on in life. I've had a lot of people saying, you know, your life mirrors mine. It's uncanny, the similarities between us. I've had just abused people and people who have went through the hell and they've came out the other side. Now, those are people that have come into the comment section and have made these comments. That tells me that there's more than just the people that are saying it. There are people out there that have lived through that hell, and maybe they've turned things around, and maybe they've not. I was very fortunate that I was given the opportunity to turn things around and that I chose to do it. So you have to have the opportunity, but you also have to make the conscious decision to choose to take that opportunity. So I am going to be talking about that. Make no mistake about that. I'm going to be talking about it because I think it's, I got to be honest, I think it's as important or even more important than a lot of the topics that I cover on this show regarding cybersecurity and cybercrime. If someone's been abused, if they've went through a bunch of hell as a child or even as an adult, if they're going through that, maybe just talking about it, you know, being able to see that, hey, this guy, Brett Johnson, was able to turn his life around. And this is my insight into that. This is how I did it. This is what I think about. This is my problems. These are my problems that I'm going through. Like I got to say, I mean, while I have been given the opportunity to lead a legal life and I've taken it, that does not mean that I am cured of all my ills. I'm not. I have massive amounts of difficulty engaging in a healthy relationship. I don't even know what that is a lot of the time. I'm still learning what that is. My wife, Michelle, she's very good for me. I love her. She's outstanding. She has shown me what a healthy relationship should be, can be, but I still have trouble fitting into that. And I've been married to her for 7 years now, but I still have trouble fitting into that. I still have difficulty sharing things, stuff like that. So I think it's important to talk about that in case somebody out there is maybe having the same type of difficulty. There was a gentleman today. He goes by the screen name. Let's see what his name is here. He goes by the screen name of Reno Death. Reno Death. I have no idea where that screen name comes from, but what he said he said that he was giving me feedback on my show, and he had mentioned that he had been an addict and he had overcome his addiction. I have never been. I was addicted to crime and unhealthy women, but I have never been addicted to drugs. I have had friends that have been addicted to drugs and are addicted to drugs. Two of my childhood friends that I grew up with, one of them overdosed. They were brothers. One overdosed on OxyContin and cocaine on a Christmas. The brother overdosed on OxyContin and cocaine the following Thanksgiving, or it was vice versa, one Thanksgiving, one Christmas. That's what it was. So I have seen those addictions. My cousin is addicted to opiates today. He's been addicted, he's the same age as I am. I think he's been addicted to them for 25 years or longer. So while I've never been addicted to drugs, I picture that trying to get over those types of addictions is nigh on impossible. And this gentleman was able to get past that, and he's in computer science now, about to graduate. And I was simply saying, you know, I'm proud of you. First, you show a strength that I can't imagine how strong you have to be able to overcome that type of addiction. Not only to overcome that type of addiction, but to then go on, turn your life around, get a degree in computer science, and then go from there. So he was a little self-doubting, you know, says he wasn't the best student. And my view of that, dude, you have seen shit that most human beings will never see. You have been through stuff that most human beings will never be through. You have shown strength in overcoming that most humans will never be able to do. Do your grades reflect who you are? No, they don't. But I tell you where it will show up. Once you get that computer science degree, once you get it, it's coming. Once you get it and you start to work either for yourself or for an employer, you, my friend, are going to excel because you've shown strength, you've shown drive, you've shown initiative, you've shown all these things, and you've been through hell. Now you're on the other side and you're able to see the benefits of that. I think that you're going to absolutely excel in anything that you choose to do, truly. All right. So these are the type of people that have been reaching out to me. I think it's important to talk about some of the stuff that I have been through as well and address that, because it's a community. I really think that it takes, I did a show earlier about it takes a village, how everyone has to work together to help each other to be more secure, but it also matters just with the humanity as a whole. We have to help each other out. We should share our experiences. We should let everyone know that, hey, you're not a loner out there. You're not the only person that's been through the shit. There are other people too. So we're going to talk about that more and more. Now, as I said, I had Neanderthal Learning Games. He comes out and he says, you can talk about you more and more. You're right. And as you notice, I'm doing that right now. I want to juxtapose that against another individual who came out and said, you need to be yourself, but then proceeded to say that me acting like I do on my show is annoying as hell and didn't need a bunch of any more stupid son of a bitches commenting on BS. Look, there's a difference between giving feedback like Neanderthal Learning Games gave me, which said, hey, just talk more about you. Maybe, and he suggested giving up the voices. I'm not going to do that. I'm still going to do my dual voices because I have fun doing that shit. So there's a difference between that healthy type of feedback, that constructive feedback that Neanderthal gives, and this bullshit asshole type stuff that Lori Mack gave me. You're annoying as hell. You know what? There's one asshole on my show, and it's me. If you don't like it, you don't got to watch. I promise you, there's a whole shitload of content on YouTube. Maybe you can stream some shit. Maybe you can download some shit. I don't know, but you don't got to watch my show. I do my show because I want to have fun. I want to educate people. All right. Now, I thank you for listening. I welcome any and all feedback. But if you're going to be an asshole, there's only one asshole that's allowed in the community. I'm that asshole. We are not going to be a toxic community. We're not going to do this flaming bullshit. We're not going to do any stuff like that. We're going to come together and we're going to try to help each other. All right. There's only one room for one asshole, and that's this guy. Moving right along. I've had a lot of people that have suggested that I bring criminals on, former felons on my show, that I network with other former felons, things like that. I don't mind doing that at all, and I want to do that. Now, that being said, I want to talk about the criminal mindset for a minute. When I finally turned my life around and decided to be a legal individual, a lot of things came into realization for me. I was very fortunate that I went through the RDAP program in federal prison, the Residential Drug Abuse Program. It's a 9-month program. You're in a special unit, and it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of nothing but cognitive behavioral therapy, peer pressure groups on top of that. You've got the counselors in there, everything else. So they call you out on everything, and they teach you that your thoughts determine your feelings, and your feelings determine your actions. If you can change your thought process, your feelings will change, and then your thought patterns will change. It's a really nifty program. It works like a charm if and when you decide to actually start working the program. It took me a while. All right. Now, I bring that up because when I actually changed my life around, what I realized is that a real change is more than just getting a legal job. If an addict stops using drugs, and they teach this in AA and a lot of rehab programs, if an addict does that, what do they tell that addict to do? You have to change people, places, and things. All right. Now, I'm getting to why I'm talking about this in criminal activity. The why is that I see a lot of individuals that are former felons that have not changed their lifestyle. They've gotten a legal job, but they're still living the same lifestyle. Instead of paying for it with illegal activity, they're paying for it with a legal job now. It seems to me that if you're doing that, you've really not changed anything at all, or benefited society whatsoever. I think it takes a change of people, places, and things, a fundamental shift in understanding that a healthy lifestyle, not just with food, but a healthy relationship type lifestyle is a necessity to doing the right thing. Okay, and I've seen a lot. I went down to Florida, interviewed this guy for another show that really never got off the air, but his name is Richard Midkiff, and he served a lot of time in Florida State Prison. And that man turned his life around. That man had this fundamental change of who he was before he went in and became a completely different, healthy, good human being. He got out of prison. And I was very fortunate that I was able to go down and interview this man. I wrote a blog about him on another website that I had at the time, talking about how good of a man this guy was. That type of shift where you're getting rid of the people, places, and things that you used to be associated with, you've changed your entire lifestyle. That's not very common when we talk about former felons. And what I mean by that is I am not going to bring anybody on my show that is bragging about the amount of money they used to steal. Okay, I'm not going to bring anybody on my show that sits there and they read a criminal article and they start laughing and saying, "Oh shit, I could have made double that with half the work." I mean, if I say that, you're going to know that I don't mean that shit. There are some people that mean that. So while I don't mind, and I look forward to networking with other former criminals who have changed their life, a lot of them simply change the activity which funds that life. And I am not into that at all. I've talked to a few former felons just out of prison. And I will tell you again, I've said it on a different show, but what I have seen with people that are released from prison, they really have the hopes of getting out and doing the right thing. But even then, they have some cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance being faulty thinking, all right? I talked to one guy that said, "Oh, the banks are the real criminals." No, you are the real criminal. I was the real criminal. Banks are banks. They're going to do what they're going to do. Don't worry about somebody else. Don't worry about calling the government criminals, anything else. Worry about your responsibility. I worry about my responsibility. Accept that you were a fuck, like I accepted I was a fuck, and then change that. I was very fortunate when I went to prison. I had a gentleman take me under his wing. He had served like 23, 25 years in prison, state prison. He was coming down, and he told me, he said, "Hey, you can change whatever you don't like about yourself in prison. Make it a positive experience." And that's what I'm talking about. Have you made it, any felon out there, have you made it a positive experience? Or did you spend your prison time in the fucking TV room, watching TV all day, betting on sports, trying to get contraband in, stealing stuff out of the kitchen, blah, 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 blah. Did you do that? I mean, how did you spend your time? Were you making yourself a better human being or simply partying in your environment? So the criminal mindset on that. I had a gentleman, and as in Nancy, M as in Mary, C, NMC, asked me about temptation in the comment section. He said, "Hey, what do you do about temptation? Are you ever tempted?" And I told him I would answer the question here. All right. And the answer is, it's difficult. the answer is I was a lifetime criminal for years, since I was 10 years old up until in my 40s. So I was a lifetime criminal. All right. Have that criminal mindset ingrained inside my head, everything else. When I turned my life around, I had Keith Malarski of the FBI. He took me under his wing, gave me references, advice. I had Carice Hendrick of the CNP group, Card Not Present group, bring me in for a keynote speaking position. I had Microsoft come in and hire me to consult. Bang, 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 bang. Well, when all this was going on, I didn't really know if it was going to be a sustainable thing, if I was actually going to be able to make a living, a career out of doing what I'm doing. Because let's be honest, I can't touch a computer. I've got my own computer, but no one's going to hire me and let me in on their network. I'm chief criminal officer right now of Arcos Labs. I'm not allowed their network. I'm on their network. I'm not allowed to see a lot of the sensitive data that the company has, that a lot of that any other corporate level officer would be able to see. I'm not allowed to do that because of my record. So I was not, when I first started this career, this legal career, I was not sure that I would ever be able to, that it would be something that would be long term, that I would be able to make a living doing it. So I was always prepping. I was always preparing to break the law in case something went haywire. I was planning on committing synthetic fraud. We're going to have an episode on what synthetic fraud is. I was planning on committing synthetic fraud, or I was planning on starting a dark web marketplace, both of which were highly profitable and are highly profitable. I didn't pull the trigger on it, but I was always prepping. And what happened was, it was about the, I don't know, maybe the second month working with Microsoft or something. But I had flown in from Seattle, Washington. I was at the house here in Birmingham, Alabama. I was the only person awake. Everyone else was asleep. I don't know, it was 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I had a real aha moment. At that moment, I mean, it just hit me that I was going to be okay, that I didn't need to break the law anymore. And I say need, that's that cognitive dissonance popping in again. You see, you don't need to break the law. You choose to. I chose to break the law, but that's what I thought. I said, I don't need to do this anymore. And it hit me. I mean, it hit me hard. And I sat there just kind of thinking about it, considering it, and went to bed. And what happened is it really was like this physical hole that was inside of me, because that's what I had done for decades. Broken the law, financed anything that I wanted to do by criminal activity. So it was really like this gaping hole that was in me. Keith Malarski, I sent him a note after that. I hadn't spoken to the guy or written him for months. And the reason why is I told him, I was like, I didn't want to have to lie to you. I wanted, when I wrote you to know that I was okay, and I'm okay. So that really got rid of a lot of the fear that I had and the temptation of committing crime. Now, that doesn't mean the temptation sometimes doesn't pop up. Like, I would see a technique or something like this, refund fraud or synthetic fraud techniques, or I would read some story about fraud, like stimulus fraud or what have you, and be tempted. And the way that I would combat that is I would talk to my law enforcement friends, or I would write a blog about that specific type of fraud, or I would do a podcast about that specific type of fraud, do some interviews, what have you. And that tended to get rid of the temptation. And everything was fine until coronavirus, that friggin' Chinese virus, to quote Trump. I'm sure there's somebody out there, oh God, he called it a Chinese virus. It's coronavirus. That's what it was, out of that Wuhan coronavirus lab. I do believe that. I do believe that. So that hit. I was filming a commercial with T-Mobile the month before the lockdown started to come in. That was February. March, as the lockdowns were coming into effect, I knew that my speaking engagements were going to be canceled because no one was going to do in-person conferences anymore. I knew that was going to be canceled. I knew that my consulting gigs were going to run dry, everything else. And that fear of not being able to support my family was very real. So I called the family in the kitchen and I told them, I was like, hey, the way this story ends is with me back committing crime and in prison for 20 years. That's the way this is going to end. And what happened is by me voicing that, and I didn't just voice it to my wife and my stepsons, I voiced it to anyone and everyone who would listen to me. By me voicing it, by me getting it out, I didn't break the law. I like to say I'm the only fraudster that went broke during the pandemic. And I may very well be, because the government had, for 6 months, there was absolutely no security. And you had 16-year-olds that were stealing $60,000 a week on unemployment fraud, 16-year-olds who will never be caught, mind you, because they implemented these stimulus programs with no security protocols whatsoever. As a matter of fact, they got rid of the security that was in place. That's what happened. So I hope that answers the question about temptation. These days, I found out with the stimulus fraud and my fear of breaking the law, I found out that I was a hell of a lot stronger than I thought I was, because I really, really did think that I was going to go back and start committing crime, but I didn't do that. So I hope that answers the question about temptation and how I handle that, and the temptation that I have now. Another gentleman over on Lex Fridman's episode 272, which I'm on, by the name of CB, he makes the comment, well, I think this guy's a little narcissistic. Well, I don't know if I am or not. All right. I know that I've been through counseling. I've seen psychologists and everything else, and they would be the ones to diagnose it. They've not diagnosed it yet. Now, my mom, she won't go to a psychologist, but I would be willing to bet that she is a narcissist, that she's got some bipolar disorder, or split, whatever that is, BPD, whatever the hell it is. I'm willing to bet all that kind of stuff. I would wager the farm on it. Me, I don't know. I know that I've got issues. There's not a doubt in my mind about that. Okay, and I know that I fight hard to confront them, to try to think them through, to come to terms with things. And I also like to, while I can't talk, I feel uncomfortable talking to my wife and people who are close to me. I feel much more comfortable in an environment like this, or on a stage, sharing this type of stuff. You know, what I'm thinking, the difficulties that I've had, stuff like that. I have a lot of trouble sharing that with my wife and family, and that's because I really care about what they say. Not that I don't care about what you guys say, but it's different. It's different. So, am I a narcissist? Shit, I don't know. He said maybe a little narcissist. I don't think you can be little. I think either you are or you ain't. So maybe I am. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Shit, who knows? Somebody out there does. I already spoke about abuse. I had Reno Death again. He asked me, he's like, hey man, can you comment on the wares scene? Is there a connection between wares and traditional types of cybercrime? And what he's talking about is, downloading movies, downloading games, pornography, illegal downloads, music, what have you. So wares, back in my day, I was a prolific downloader while I was committing crime. Absolutely. I had me a music collection that you would not believe. I had everything in the world and loved the shit out of it. Matter of fact, when I started this legal career of mine, I was given a presentation in Oklahoma, and an FBI friend of mine, a true friend, FBI friend of mine, he and a professor had invited me out to speak at the University of Tulsa. So went down there to talk, and I was giving this presentation. Before I went out there, I was like, hey man, and I won't say his name because he probably doesn't want me to tell who it is, but I was like, man, I'm really proud of myself. I'm not doing anything illegal. The only thing I'm doing is every now and then I'll download a movie. And he looks at me, he's like, serious, Brett? I was like, yeah, man, that's the only thing I'm doing. He's like, are you telling me that you can't afford to buy a movie? And I looked at him, I was like, fuck, you're right. Is there a connection between illegal downloads and traditional crime? So this gentleman, first let me say that he makes the comment in the comment section of YouTube that, a lot of people upload films or music or porn or whatever they're uploading, games, what have you, not for profit, but just to help others out. Yes, you do have that. Okay, you do have that. But I need you to understand that the people who run the sites, whether it be the Pirate Bay, RARBG, Yiffy, if that's still around, whatever is out there, Kick-Ass Torrents, I think they re-upped that one recently. The people who run these sites make a shitload of money. Before Kick-Ass Torrents was taken down, the person who owned that was making $7 million a month just on advertising. There's a shitload of money that's made in piracy. All right. The people who are uploading the files, do they profit? Some of them certainly do. A lot of those files are infected with stuff. You're wondering how your personal information is stolen, how bots, we're talking about bots later on in the show, how bots or the malware is installed on the system and then captures all your data. That's one of the ways. You've got crypto these days. You've got a shitload of crypto miners that are attached to these files. You download the newest game. Well, I don't know what the big game is right now, but because my ass is playing Fortnite still. I just started playing Fortnite, especially that no build mode, because I couldn't build for shit. I'd always end up the last two that were on the map, and I'd go out trying to kill this son of a bitch, and he'd be building up in the sky, and I couldn't build. Or he'd be chasing me, and I couldn't build to defend myself. So now they've got this zero build mode, and man, I am surgical with that shotgun. I'm like Denzel Washington from Training Day. Jake, I am surgical with this motherfucker. That's right. So I'm very happy, and I've been playing Fortnite. The only thing better than one shotgun is two shotguns. The only thing better than two is three. That's right. 3 shotguns. Got my shield. Got my med pack. I'm going hunting. That's right. And I have been ruthless. So I'm having a lot of fun with that. But back to the torrents and piracy and stuff like that. So a lot of the files are infected. A lot of files have crypto miners on them, or whatever the malware is, things like that. The people who run the sites profit enormously from advertising as well, things like that. The studios, think about Batman, for example. Robert Pattinson. I saw the movie in the theater. I've got HBO Max down there, so I've not watched it again. I was not horribly impressed with the film. I actually think I'll love it on the second viewing. First viewing, I was like, eh. But I think on the second viewing, I'm really going to really get into that movie. Where it comes in with piracy, think about HBO Max for a second. HBO Max depends on these films to sell subscriptions. Now, subscription models, if you keep a subscription for 6 months or longer, the chances are you're not going to cancel that. The first 6 months of any subscription service are that area for the company where you're like, shit, hope they keep it. But after 6 months, people can tend to keep paying for whether they watch the shit or not. All right. HBO depends on movies like Batman to sell subscriptions. A lot of people don't go to physical movies anymore. They stream the stuff online. So that helps pay for these movies. All right. It helps pay not just the studio, but all the people who make this movie. You talk about thousands of different people that help make this film as well. So you got to pay them. Batman is on all the torrents now for downloads, and there are tens of thousands of people that are downloading. These tens of thousands of people are sharing it with other people. So you've got potentially hundreds of thousands of different subscribers that if it were not available on the torrents, that they would be signing up for paid subscriptions on HBO Max. And it's not just HBO Max. It's Netflix, it's Hulu. Hulu's crap most of the time, but it's Hulu, it's Disney Plus, it's Paramount. You know, if you're watching the Kevin Costner Western, which I keep forgetting the name, I've watched 3 episodes. I love the shit out of it, but I can't really get into it yet. So you're talking about a lot of subscriptions that are lost, a lot of revenue that is lost, and that revenue tends to determine if more films are made. So if you love the shit out of Batman and a lot of people are pirating it, the studio's not making money out of Batman, and it could potentially determine whether more sequels are made. Certainly it works that way with games, with TV series, with everything, with all this other stuff. So just to understand that there's a lot of damage that's done with piracy. Piracy also leads into other forms of cybercrime. And here's how. So you got little Billy at the house, and little Billy, he's playing his video game. Maybe he's playing Fortnite, and he's wanting a skin. And the parents sit little Billy down and like, little Billy, all that is a skin. It's an outfit that the character wears. It's not going to help you win your games. You suck at Fortnite. You're going to suck regardless of how much money you spend at Fortnite. So why not just not spend any money at Fortnite? We'll take you to the park and we'll do that. And you'll still suck. We won't be out any money. And little Billy starts crying. And little Billy's, please, 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 please. So finally the parents give in. And they give little Billy, access. They pay for it with a credit card, or they give, even worse, they give little Billy mom and dad's credit card, and little Billy goes to his Xbox or his PS5 or whatever the hell he's playing Fortnite on, and he pays for that skin, all right, or the pack or whatever the hell he's buying. That's one instance, and that first time it's fine, but then little Billy wants more skins. And mom and dad are like, no, shit, no. We've already spent too much. You still suck like we told you you would. You still suck at Fortnite. So little Billy really wants that skin. So what does little Billy do? Maybe he sneaks in mom and dad's wallet or purse, gets out the credit card, and goes and buys the shit anyway. That first party fraud is what you call that. That friendly fraud. Yeah, it's called friendly fraud. So he goes out and does this. Now, mom and dad find out about it. They lock the card down. They have to pay the bill most of the time because they're not going to prosecute little Billy. So that's what happens. Now, little Billy is grounded, everything else, but he still wants those skins. He still wants, or maybe there's a new game coming out. All right. He's wanting all these games for his Xbox or his PS5 and he can't afford them, or he's got to play a Nintendo Switch. And he can't afford the games. So he's like, I need it. I want it. I need it. That cognitive dissonance, which is pretty common in a 4 or 5-year-old or a 10 or 12-year-old or a 30 or 40-year-old. So what does he do? Well, he can find some sites that have these games. Maybe not PS5 games, but my God, they've got some Nintendo Switch games. He'd have to learn how to crack his Nintendo Switch because maybe he's got one of the original ones and it's pretty easy to root and everything. So he starts downloading the films. Well, as he's downloading the films, he's got his mom and dad, they save their shekels and they buy him either an Xbox Series X or a PS5, but they can't afford a lot of games. So they say, pick out one game. And he's like, I want God of War. So they get him God of War. And then all of a sudden he's like, but I want Horizon West too. And they're like, we can't afford that. That shit is $70. Play you some God of War. So he really wants it. So what happens at that point? Well, a few things happen. Depending on the kid, he can swallow that and understand that, hey, mom and dad work for a living and they can't afford to give your ass everything you want. Or he can sit there and say, well, a buddy of mine was talking about these forums where I can go in and they will share accounts with me. Or maybe I can buy somebody's account that's got like 200 games on it, and I only have to pay like $20 or $30. Certainly I can talk mom and dad into $20 or $30. So he starts that way. Or if he's got a gaming PC or a Switch, he starts downloading the games like that. So that's where these pirates, you hear all the time, or you used to hear all the time about how marijuana was a gateway drug. To me, friendly fraud and downloads is a gateway to more traditional types of cybercrime, credit card fraud, stimulus fraud, bots, everything else going on like that. Notice I'm talking about bots today because that is the episode. So that's my thing about wares. And I hope that answers Reno Death's question. Again, I'm proud of you, dude, for overcoming that addiction. I think you're going to do outstanding in computer science. Keep your chin up. I know you're doubting yourself sometimes, but keep your chin up. It's going to be all right. Now, let's talk about the meat of the show, because we done talked a lot about other shit. I could have ended the show right there. But I wanted to address the community. I think we're going to do that more and more. We'll shorten it, but I think we're going to do that more and more because it's the Brett Johnson show. It's more than just talking about cybercrime, fraud, things like that. It is the Brett Johnson show. So we're going to talk about anything we want to talk about. Okay. And I think that's very, very beneficial as we continue to grow as a community. Ha! Who would have thought Brett Johnson, the last community I had, made the front cover of Forbes and got a whole shitload of people arrested. And then I went on to make the most wanted list, the United States most wanted list. And I got to tell you, there's nothing quite like looking at a paper and seeing the United States of America versus your name. That's when you know you have really fucked up. So today's episode, bots. Bots are bad for your health. Now, not every bot. There are some bots out there that are very, very beneficial. For example, if you go to an e-commerce site, some e-commerce sites, the storefront is 90% bot traffic. It handles the chat functions. It scrapes the website, does all these other types of activities to make the customer service experience very fluid, very good, very, very nice. The customer likes it. The customer comes back to the site. It's what you call frictionless. Everything's nice and smooth for that customer. So bots can be very beneficial. As a matter of fact, it's estimated that over 50% of all internet traffic is bots. And a bot, in case you didn't know, a bot is just a few lines of code that creates a program, and that program does something. It can scrape the internet for websites, data, prices, anything else like that. It can handle chat functions on a site. It can do any number of things that are beneficial for mankind. What can it do? It can be a virtual assistant for you. It can do all these different types of things. It's very easy to program. It's just a few lines of code. Oftentimes, you don't even need to know coding in order to build a bot. For example, you can go over, build a bot, like build a bear. Now, build a bot. So you can go over to Twitter, and there's a visual programmer there where you can build bots on Twitter that will retweet or tweet or advertise or any number of different functions. So bots are very popular. They're very effective. They're also very effective for criminal activity. You can take over accounts, you can do credit card fraud, credential stuffing, scrape webs, deny inventory on sites, all these other different types of things on the criminal side of things. And what got me to want to do this episode, there are two things. The first is a news story that I read just the day before yesterday. And the news story it was about Apple Pay, but I'll tell you, this is hitting every single financial institution, and it's hitting every single fintech service that's out there. All right. So if you've signed on to some fintech service, this shit can hit you as well. So what's happening is that criminals are using bots over the phone. The bot contacts you by phone, pretends to be your financial institution or whatever fintech service like Apple Pay or what have you, pretends to be that service and says, hey, we need to verify your account, a security problem, whatever the issue is, we need to verify your account. We're going to send you a text message, or you're going to get a code by text or by email. So that code is actually where you have multi-factor authentication employed on your system, on your service, on that website with that merchant or that bank or what have you. That is the multi-authentication code that the criminal is triggering to be sent from the actual website to your phone or to your email. And the scam goes, hey, we need to verify your account. We're going to send you a code. Please input that into the phone when you get it to be verified. So the code's sent to you. You input it in there. That is your MFA code. Crook then has access to your accounts and cashes them out. Very, very effective. And think about it for a second. So you get a call or a text message that looks like it comes from your bank. If it's a call, it's a robocall. The actual caller ID is your financial institution. It says, hey, there's a problem on the account, or hey, we need to verify your account or verify activity. We're going to have a code sent to you. The code is actually sent from that financial organization. It's your multi-factor authentication code. So it's actually tricking you into giving the criminals your MFA code. Very, very effective, all bot driven. And it used to be that humans would do that. Humans would call you up, act like they were your financial institution, and try to trick you into giving them the MFA code that was then sent to your phone or sent to your email address if you had multi-factor authentication deployed like that. So it is extremely popular. As a matter of fact, it is so popular that on Telegram, on Dread, on other dark web and service web criminal channels, criminals are talking about that is the easiest way to make money at this point in time. So that got me thinking about bots. As some people out there may know, I am also Chief Criminal Officer for Arcos Labs. The first, I don't brag much, but I'm going to brag about that. I am the first Chief Criminal Officer on the planet. And no, that shit ain't a gimmick, because I know what the hell I'm talking about. Can come in, save a company a lot of money, explain exactly how they are being defrauded, how they're going to be defrauded, what they need to watch out for, how they need to secure themselves. Well, Arcos deals a lot in detecting and defeating bots. So I'm very happy to work with them. They're a great company. That's not a plug. That's just simply saying what I do. But it got me thinking. This story and another story got me thinking about, not another story, but another thing got me thinking about bots. So really, bots have been around forever. Criminals have used bots for a long time. But only recently have we seen bots really come to maturity, being used and being understood by the mass criminal mindset, the mass criminal communities that are out there, being understood the effectiveness of using bots to commit crime and thereby boosting profit for most criminals. The problem has been that cyber criminals, by and large, are not horribly sophisticated. They are nowhere near computer geniuses. They hear the word bot and they're like, what the hell? I don't even know what the hell shit that is. How do you use that? So that becomes the issue. All right. They really didn't know how to use it. They certainly didn't know how to build them. But there's another thing that's going on that prompted me wanting to do this episode about bots. And that other thing is called Genesis Marketplace. Now, Genesis has been around for a couple of years. All right. But what Genesis does is it really offers bots to the masses of cyber criminals that are out there, and it makes it easy to use bots. So, and I'll walk through what Genesis is. So, and I'm going to start by walking through talking about account takeovers. So an account takeover, historically, traditionally, a criminal would go on one of these criminal marketplaces. He would buy your credentials to your financial institution, your fintech service, whatever. He would get your credentials, maybe some PII, maybe a little account information as well. That'd run anywhere from $20 to $40. Now he's going to try to take over your account. So to take over the account, he can either do it online or over the phone. I often opted to take over accounts using the phone because if you choose to try to do that online, well, you don't have the cookie for one thing. You don't have the correct browser fingerprint for another, which means that you have to either come up with a brand new device, or if you've got some browser fingerprint information, try to spoof the real account holder's device, which becomes very problematic, a point of failure. And you also didn't have stuff like the correct IP or anything else like that. So you had many points of potential failure when it came to a criminal trying to take over an account. Many points. All right. Now, when I say a browser fingerprint, for those who may not know, when you visit a website, that website captures several different unique characteristics about the device and the session of you visiting the site. The browser fingerprint, it captures the browser that you're using, the device that you're using, the language, the time zone, captures all these different unique things about, I forgot the actual number, I think it's like 27 or something like that, or 42. And typically companies only look at about 11 of them to identify you. But those characteristics are unique enough to each individual that they can potentially identify you against millions of different users. It's very, very effective. So if you don't have, as a criminal, if you don't have the right browser fingerprint, it starts to raise fraud flags. So historically taking over an account online because of the cookie, the fingerprint, the IP, issues like that, there were many, many different points of potential failure for that. So I often just picked up the phone, spoofed the account holder's phone number, would call in the customer service of the financial institution, and then social engineer the customer service agent into letting me take over the account. Basically meaning I would update the phone number on the account to a phone that I controlled, not the phone of the actual account holder. Very easy to do that. Now, Genesis solves a lot of those problems. Genesis is a bot marketplace. It currently lists over 400,000 bots. Those bots deliver, so they sit on a machine and they deliver. Somebody goes to sign into their financial institution. It captures the correct cookie. It captures the correct browser fingerprint, their credentials, the credit card information. It captures every single thing that a criminal would need to then go back into that account and milk it dry, steal all the money, capture data, whatever he wanted to do, he can do that at that point. Genesis solves that problem. It sells the bots. There's 400,000 of them on there. Each bot runs anywhere from $6 up to $375. The bot delivers all the information and the tools needed to take over the account. And it simplifies it for the criminal because, as I said, most criminals are not sophisticated. They simply don't know how to do that. Yeah, they can get the cookie, but what the hell do you do with it? How do I use a cookie? How do I use the browser fingerprint? So Genesis also has either a browser plugin or its own standalone browser that inputs that information into it automatically for the criminal. So think about it like this. Here's what actually happens. And I've seen this. I've actually been talking to some victims that have had their bank accounts taken over and money sent out of the bank. I'll tell you how that turns out. All right. But what happens is I don't know, but I've got a Genesis bot on my machine. I go and sign on to my bank. When I sign on to my bank, the Genesis bot captures my cookie, my browser fingerprint, every single thing it needs, credentials, everything else, single thing the criminal needs to sign back in right after me. So I sign into my bank account, just check my available balance. I come back out of the bank account. When I come back out, the criminal uses the exact same session token that I just came in with, signs in. Now I've got multi-factor authentication on my bank. All right. Every time I sign in, it sends me an MFA code. But because the criminals captured the cookie of that session, everything he needs in that specific session, when he goes to sign on, that MFA, that multi-factor authentication, isn't triggered. It's bypassed because the bank sees it as me just coming right back in at that point. So multi-factor is bypassed. Now, I've been talking to several victims of this. I had a couple of people email me asking for help, that their account had been taken over. Money had been sent out of their account either by an ACH transfer or a Zelle transfer. Money had been sent out. They had notified the bank. The bank had said that fraud didn't occur, that that individual had sent the money out. So what happens is Genesis is so effective that the criminal steals the credentials, steals all the things that are needed to take over your account, comes back in right after you. The bank doesn't know it's not you because it's the correct cookie, it's the correct browser fingerprint, blah, 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 comes right back in, steals the money. The bank thinks it's you that's sending the money out, denies you fraud protection after that. Now, I'm talking to 2 victims currently that this is happening to. 2 victims where it's happened several months ago, and the bank still refuses to give money to make them whole because the bank thinks it is the actual person, it's the actual account holder that's sending out money. That's what Genesis is doing. So I wanted to talk about bots because of that. Genesis is making bots available to the mass numbers of cyber criminals out there that typically would not know how to do that. It simplifies it for them. We're seeing, really, like I said before, we're seeing bots come to maturity. This is probably the decade of bots, or the year of bots, or whatever the hell bot type of terminology you want to use with it. But that is what's going on. And it's not just things like bots being used over the phone to trick you into giving up your MFA codes, or bots being used for account takeovers. There's several different things that bots can be used on the criminal side of things in order to defraud you, to victimize you or your organization. Certainly, you have the account takeovers that I just talked about, that thing like Genesis. And Genesis is so effective that it's actually spawned other marketplaces that are copying the Genesis model. So you've got 2easy, you've got Russia House, you've got several different other marketplaces that are copying that Genesis model. I'll get into the different types of bot crimes in a second. I just wanted to add this about Genesis. Genesis is really changing the way that account takeovers have worked. I just explained how they used to work, how they're working now. The success rate using a Genesis type product is much higher than that historical type of account takeover that criminals used to do. Much higher. And I've already seen it hitting banks, and the banks don't even realize that it is an account takeover. So the criminal really walks away with money and doesn't have to worry about anything at that point. This is going to change, and there are very few things throughout the entire history of modern cybercrime that changes the dynamic of cybercrime. Shadow Crew did it, cryptocurrency did it, the Tor browser did it, Ross Ulbricht did it, refunding fraud did it, and now Genesis, that type of Genesis platform, is doing it. It's changing the dynamic of the way online crime operates. I estimate within 12 to 18 months that traditional type of account takeover sale that took place on dark web marketplaces and criminal marketplaces, you're not going to see that. You're not just going to go in and buy credentials and then have to worry about cookie, fingerprint, IP, everything else like that. 12 to 18 months from now, you're going to see that if you're looking to take over an account, when you go to buy that, you're going to get the cookie with it. You're going to get the browser fingerprint. You're going to get everything you need to go in and take over the account. It is extremely effective, and it is eating financial institutions, fintech companies alive. If it's not, it's going to be. and I don't just pull that out of my ass. I don't. I've been very good about anticipating these massive shifts in online crime. I called it with synthetic fraud. I called it with refund fraud. I've been calling this shit. Hell, I helped build this shit. I ought to know it. Genesis is going to change a whole shitload of stuff. We're going to see more and more bots being deployed by criminals that historically would not be using those bots. The ease of use is becoming much easier all of a sudden, much easier. The ease of use is becoming easier. That's what you call a tautology. Shouldn't be doing that. I did it anyway because this is the Brett Johnson show and I can do what I want. But that's going to change things. So we need to understand that. Now I'm talking about bots, and it's more than just account takeovers. It's more than just tricking an individual into giving up an MFA code. You've got the ability of bots to do credit card fraud. So the way credit card fraud works, you've got your seller of the credit card details. You've got the person that commits the crime. Sometimes you've got a person that will cash it out, that will help the actual carder put cash in pocket, depending on the geographic location of the actual credit card thief, okay, or the credit carder. What happens is for those sellers, remember the 3 essentials of cybercrime: gathering data, committing crime, cashing out. Here's the secret of all this shit. All these shows that I've been doing build on each other. I've already talked about the 3 essentials of cybercrime: gathering data, committing crime, cashing out. See, it's coming into play here. I've given stats in other episodes about, 90% of every single attack uses known exploits. 80% of every single person on the planet uses the exact same login and password. Yeah, all this shit builds on each other. So pay attention. That's what's important. Pay attention because it all builds on each other. Anyway, bots can commit credit card fraud because what happens is you've got one of these sellers of stolen credit card data. He does a breach, a man-in-the-middle attack, mage card attack, whatever he's doing. He gets a shitload of credit card numbers. So say he gets a breach set of, say, 20,000 card numbers. He's got that set. Then he does another where he captures maybe 200,000 card numbers. He's got that second set. And then maybe he's got another that's got 2 million numbers. He's got that third set. Now, he doesn't open and sell all 3 sets at the same time, because once you break open that stolen set of data and start selling the information out of it, a clock starts. It has a time limit on it, and there's only so much time that all those cards in that data set are valid, because once you start using stolen credit cards, law enforcement, the bank, the credit card processor, they're going to try to pinpoint where that breach happened. And once that breach is pinpointed, they can then determine every single card that was compromised in that breach, and then they shut them down. So once you start selling stolen credit card data from a breach, you only have so much time to use it. So the criminal, the seller, knows that. So he opens it up, starts to sell, but before he sells, he needs to make sure that those stolen card numbers are legitimate, that they're still alive. So what does he need to do? He needs to start to test them. How do you test them? Well, you test them using bots. You can go to like a streaming service, you can go to a phone sex site, whatever you're going to, and that bot will input thousands of these different card numbers in there just to verify that they're alive and that they're legitimate. Typically, it'll charge maybe 30 cents to $1, and then the money is credited right back to the card. So that e-commerce site, that merchant, doesn't experience any traditional credit card fraud. That customer, that e-commerce site is not losing product or service. They're not. All right. But they are losing money. And here's why. Every card number that's inputted in and charged, verified, costs that e-commerce site about 10 cents. So the credit card processor, just to process the card number, charges that merchant every single number that's put in. So if you've got a bot that's testing credit card numbers on that specific site, thousands, tens of thousands sometimes in an hour or day or what have you, that merchant is potentially losing a lot of money. So you see, there's always a victim, even though that merchant's not losing a product or service, there's always a victim. So you do credit card fraud, you can do credential stuffing. Remember, I just said everything builds on each other. I gave the statistic earlier that 80% of every single person on the planet uses the same or similar password and login across multiple websites. That's the problem with credential stuffing, because if I send out an email that looks like it comes from your financial institution, your level of awareness may be high enough that you're like, obviously a phishing email, I'm not going to fall for that. But what happens if I send out a phishing email that looks like it comes from Hulu? Is your level of awareness as high? No, it's not. It's not. You're probably going to look at it and say, Hulu? Anyone even watch Hulu? I mean, the only thing they got is The Handmaid's Tale, and that second season sucked. And it did suck. It did. First season, absolutely amazing. Second season, you're wondering who in the hell decided to go that route with that show. Horrible. But your level of awareness is not as high. The problem is that a criminal knows that 80% of everybody uses the exact same password. So it's an automated program. Little Billy, 400 pounds in his mom's basement, you know, that kid that started with friendly fraud, now he's upgraded to credential stuffing. He captures those credentials that you fell for on the phishing scheme that I sent the Hulu account information for. It's an automated program. He goes to sleep. He's inputted the credentials in the program while he's asleep. Those credentials are attempted across thousands of different websites. He wakes up the next morning. He's got access to your bank account, credit cards, credit report, tax statements, Hulu account. He's got your ass at that point. That's the problem with that. And bots do that. They automate things. They scale great for mass attacks, everything else like that. You can do web scraping. So a bot can be built that goes out and it captures prices, it captures reviews of different sites, all these other different things that a criminal then uses to build his own site and trick a user, a legitimate user, to come in and fall for a potential fraud that's going on there. So think about these. There's a lot of massive fake websites that are out there that look like it's an actual merchant that has decent prices on things. And a lot of people, it'll say it's in stock for blah, blah, blah item. Person can't find it anyplace else. So legitimate customer comes in, thinks he or she is buying that product that they can't find anyplace else. They're not. They're just falling for fraud, and the criminal benefits at that point. So you can do web scraping. You can do denial of inventory. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is, think about travel for a second. So you go on to a travel website to book a flight, and a bot or a system of bots can come in, and what they do is they take all the low-priced flights and they simply act like they're going to buy it. It goes to cart, all right? And when it's in the cart, they're not buying it. It's just sitting in the cart like they're going to buy it, but they never do. Some legitimate user comes in wanting to book a flight because the bot network has already come in and basically has every single low-priced flight in a cart waiting to be purchased. The only flights that are available to that customer are the really high-priced flights. What happens at that point? Well, either the customer purchases a higher flight or the customer goes elsewhere to try to find a flight, typically to a website controlled by the criminal, who then, or that the criminal wants the customer to go to, who then profits from that denial of inventory. Meanwhile, on the site that's being hit by that bot attack, you have massive amounts of inventory that's not being sold, and the prices are driven up for that e-commerce site. Denial of inventory. You've got scalping, and I don't know who all didn't fall for it, but I didn't know who all encountered it over the past couple of years. If you have tried to get a PlayStation 5, an Xbox Series X, or a graphics card to build your own system, like I tried to buy a damn graphics card, and you cannot buy a graphics card because they're all sold out. You've got these scalpers that are buying the damn things, and then they charge 2 to 3 times retail if you want one. Same thing for PlayStation 5. You can't go down to Target or Walmart and buy one of these damn things because a lot of bots have already purchased them before you can. They've purchased them, and then the person who's running the bot then list that PlayStation 5 for $1,000. So you have to pay double what you'd regularly pay for it. That's what scalping does. That's the power of bots. Bots also can launch denial of service attacks, DDoS attacks. So you've got a system of bots that's hundreds of thousands, maybe a couple million bots that simply ping a website and deny legitimate users access to that site, a denial of service attack. You've got the MFA bypasses that I've talked about. You've got the account takeovers that I've talked about. You've got all these different issues that bots are taking advantage of or being used to victimize you or your organization. That's why I say it is the year of the bot, because these systems are being built, these platforms are being built by criminals that really simplify how to use a bot. So more and more criminals are using these things to profit. It's very, and it scales beautifully. I mean, you can commit, when I was committing a tax return, I'll give you an idea of scale. When I'm the guy who started tax return identity theft. Yes, that's right. I'm the son of a bitch that's responsible for every single person's tax return being delayed every single year. I'm the guy that invented that fraud, among others. Not happy about it, not proud about it. That's just the way it is. All right. But I got to the point where I could physically file, manually file a tax return every 6 minutes. Every 6 minutes. There was a gentleman that comes out after me. I got him indicted. Yeah, when I was an informant, when I worked for the Secret Service. I identified him, taught him how to do it. Then we indicted him after that. Got this guy indicted. He automated the attack using that crime, that fraud. He automated that using bots. So he got to where he would have bots filing thousands of returns a day. So that's how bots can be used to help scale a crime, make it much more profitable. And because criminals, time is money. Okay, if you're doing things manually, you can only do so much stuff manually. If you can automate that stuff, it makes things more profitable for you. It also lowers the cost that it takes to commit that specific crime, because every crime online costs a criminal something. He has to buy your data, he has to buy your credentials, he has to maybe buy SOC 5 proxies or fingerprints or any number of things to help commit that. So by having bots in place, a lot of cost is saved on the criminal side. So how do these things get installed? So Genesis actually sits on a machine. All right, so it sits on my machine, your machine, and when I go to sign into a target website, an e-com site, or a financial institution, or what have you, it captures all of the items that are needed for a criminal to come back in and take over the account. But how did that get on my machine to begin with? Goes back what I said. Everything's linked. All these shows build up to each other. 90% of every single attack uses known exploits. 41% of every single router on the planet has the default password. I've said this before. You've got billions of IoT devices out there that have the default password, and a lot of them you can't even change the password on. That allows access for malware to be installed. 80% of every person uses the same password across multiple websites. That allows malware to be installed. SMBs are open, remote access. Those ports remain open, even though people have been warned about it potentially for years. Not potentially, they've been warned about it for years. Not doing anything about it. That again is an avenue for malware to be installed, these bots to be installed that capture these things and then deliver them to criminals or do these types of criminal activities. So you got a bunch of IoT devices out there that have malware installed on them. They can then have bots launching DDoS attacks or scraping the web for data or any number of things like that. So that's what happens. Okay, so just understand that. That's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to scare everybody to death about bots because, man, this is your ass here. They are really, I mean, it is really a year where they are ramping up. It truly is. So the question becomes, because I don't like to talk about anything unless I give solutions. So the question is, well, Brett, what the hell do we do about it? Well, I'll tell you what you do about it. I did a show talking about it takes a village. And what I mean by that, it takes a holistic approach. It takes not only the community, but it also takes looking at security as a whole. typically security has been a siloed approach. We only look at this aspect, we handle this and another department handles this or another security tool handles this and blah, 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 all the way. If you're going to stop these account takeovers and the things that are happening, it takes a holistic approach to security. All right. It takes the customer practicing proper security. But here's the thing, you can't rely on the customer, the account holder. You can't rely on the account holder to make sure things are secure in your system. That is a horrible security practice. If you're saying shit like that, and I hear people saying stuff like that all the time, we have to train the customer, so that they're educated on gift card fraud. Yeah, bullshit. The customer's not going to be educated on gift card fraud. He's not. She's not. I'll tell you now, if a criminal gets a potential victim to leave a house, there is nothing in the world that you can do to keep that person from sending money, buying gift cards, sending Western Union, whatever the hell that is. They're going to do it. So relying on the customer, the account holder, as a line of defense is poor security. That's a fact. Now, there's a whole shitload of e-commerce sites, financial institutions that don't like my ass saying that, but that's the truth. That's poor security. So it takes a holistic approach. And what do I mean by that? So you've got to have the tools that detect bot traffic. All right. Hopefully the customer, for consumers out there, pay attention, because you need to know if you're infected with malware. How do you know? Well, do you have malware bites? Are you running your security stuff? What sites are you visiting? All this shit. So practice good cyber hygiene. Don't be downloading shit. Don't do that. Don't do all this other stuff. I preach all the time about what everyone needs to do. I'm going to do another show in the very near future that's just concentrated on what people need to do to be secure online. All right. For institutions, organizations, businesses, e-com, everything else, takes that holistic approach. Realize that an account takeover, a lot of the time you really don't know, especially if you're using a Genesis type product, you don't know that it's an account takeover until that criminal makes his move. When he makes his move, you can bet your ass that whatever he's doing is something that is not common in that account. He's buying laptops? Well, that account's not bought a laptop in forever. That should be a fraud flag. He's sending an ACH or a Zelle transfer to some place he's never or she has never sent it before. That should be a fraud flag. They're buying cryptocurrency when they've never purchased it before, or a shitload of cryptocurrency. They're doing something that's not normal within that specific account. The problem is that a lot of these financial institutions where these frauds are taking place, they don't go that far. They only consider that, hey, it's the correct device. It's got the correct cookie. It is that person coming back in. What they're not realizing is that services like Genesis make it look like the real person. So at that point, you have to holistically look at the account. What's the history of the account? Is this outside of the norm of the history, regardless of what the device says, what the cookie says, what the credentials say, what the IP says? Is it outside of that? If it is, fraud flag. Look at it closely, see what's going on. So it takes that holistic approach. You have to look at the device IDs, you have to look at the cookies, you have to look at the IP range, all these other types of things that are taking place in the system, along with that activity that's going on. Is it normal for the account? So it takes that holistic approach. This idea of siloed security, no, that's done. That's done. That shit don't work no more. So you have to holistically look at things. It takes everybody working together, and also takes all these tools and data working together as well. The data's there. That's the thing. You can bet your ass that the data is there. If you're looking at it properly and objectively, it will tell you if there's a potential crime taking place, if there's a problem with this session that's going on. So that's how you stop this kind of stuff. So I just wanted to talk about that, give some ideas on how to secure yourself against that. I've already talked about that, and I'm serious about taking that holistic approach. That really is a necessity. I'm Brett Johnson. This is the Brett Johnson Show. I want to take a second out to really thank everyone for taking the time to listen to me. whether I'm bitching about something, kidding about something, throwing voices out there, whatever the hell I'm doing. At the end of the day, I'm really wanting to just try to help. All right. Not making any money off this yet. I'm hoping to. Ha! Of course, I'm hoping to. But right now, I'm not. And I'm going to continue doing this, whether I'm making money or not. That's one of the reasons I keep saying, hey, I want to keep doing this. But for me to keep doing this, I got to have fun doing it. All right. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to me. I really want to thank everyone for the feedback that they give through the comment sections, because I do read the feedback. Oftentimes I will respond to the feedback, and I don't just read the feedback and dismiss it. You know, if you've got something constructive to say or you've got a problem, tell me. It does register. It does register. Sometimes I'll listen to it, sometimes I won't, but I certainly will pay attention to what you're saying. Okay, unless you're an asshole or unless you're saying some crazy shit. I got some nuts that respond with some crazy shit that doesn't even make sense sometimes. I guess everybody's got that. But thank you so much for tuning in, taking the time to listen, and then on top of that, taking the time to comment. It's very humbling. I swear it's very humbling. I really am thankful and grateful for that. This is Brett Johnson. This is Brett Johnson Show. What do we say? Stay safe, stay secure, and stay vigilant. More importantly, this is the Brett Johnson Show. Just do the right damn thing. I'm Brett Johnson. Thank you for watching. Till next time.